Hello everybody, good morning to all. So last class at আমি history second number chapter to start কৰিছিলো আমি reading কৰি আছিলো chapter number 2 from hunting gathering to growing food এটো start কৰিছিলো already আমি read কৰিছিলো খিনি so ইয়ালৈকে আমি complete কৰিছিলো reading কৰিছিলো আমি explain কৰা নাই এতিয়ালৈকে so আজি আমি বাকি যোনখিনি আছে ৰিমেইনিং পাৰ্ট খিনিও আমি এবাৰ ৰিড কৰিম থৰলি আমি ৰিড কৰিম তাৰ পিছত আমি চেপ্টাৰটো এক্সপ্লেইন কৰিম মেইন পইণ্টছ খিনি কি আছে কি কোৱা আছে এইখিনি আমি আসামিজত ডিসকাস কৰিম ওকে so ফাৰ্স্ট আমি ইয়াৰ পৰা আজি জাস্ট চাও আমি ৰিডিং কৰো কি আছে জাস্ট থৰলি আমি ৰিড কৰি যাম Domestication is the name given to the process in which people grow plants and look after animals. Very often, plants and animals that are tended by people become different from wild plants and animals. This is because people select plants and animals for domestication. For example, they select those plants and animals that are not prone to disease. They also select plants that yield large size grain and have strong stalks capable of bearing the weight of the ripe grain. Seeds from selected plants are preserved and sown to ensure that new plants and seeds will have the same qualities. Amongst animals, those that are relatively gentle are selected for breeding. As a result, gradually domesticated animals and plants become different from wild animals and plants. For example, the teeth and horns of wild animals are usually much larger than those of domesticated animals. Look at these two sets of teeth. Which do you think belongs to a wild pig and which to a domesticated one? Domestication was a gradual process that took place in many parts of the world. It began about 12,000 years ago. Virtually all the plant and animal produce that we use as food today is a result of domestication. Some of the earliest plants to be domesticated were wheat and barley. The earliest domesticated animals include sheep and goat. A new way of life. If you plant a seed, you will notice that it takes some time to grow. This may be for several days, weeks, months, and in some cases, years. When people began growing plants, it meant that they had to stay in the same place for a long time, looking after the plants, watering, weeding, driving away animals and birds, till the grain ripened. And then the grain had to be used carefully. As grain had to be stored for both food and seed, people had to think of ways of storing it. In many areas, they began making large clay pots or wove baskets or dug pits into the ground. Do you think hunter-gatherers would have made and used pots? Give reasons for your answer. Storing animals. Animals multiply naturally. Besides, if they are looked after carefully, they provide milk, which is an important source of food, and meat, whenever required. In other words, animals that are reared can be used as a store of food. Apart from food, what are the other things that could have been obtained from animals? What are animals used for today? Finding out about the first farmers and herders. Turn to map to page 13. You will notice a number of blue squares. It marks a site from where archaeologists have found evidence of early farmers and herders. These are found all over the subcontinent. Some of the most important ones are in the northwest, in present day Kashmir, and in East and South India. To find out whether these sites were settlements of farmers and herders, scientists study evidence of plants and animal bones. One of the most exciting finds includes remains of burnt grain. This may have been burnt accidentally or on purpose. Scientists can identify these grains, and so we know that a number of crops were grown in different parts of the subcontinent. They can also identify the bones of different animals. Towards a settled life, archaeologists have found traces of huts or houses at some sites. For instance, in Barzahom, in present day Kashmir, people built pit houses which were dug into the ground with steps leading into them. This may have provided shelter in cold weather. Archaeologists have also found cooking hearths both inside and outside the huts, which suggests that depending on the weather, people could cook food either indoors or outdoors. Draw a pit house. Stone tools have been found from many sites as well. Many of these are different from the earlier Paleolithic tools, and that is why they are called Neolithic. These include tools that were polished to give a fine cutting edge, and mortars and pestles used for grinding grain and other plant produce. Mortars and pestles are used for grinding grain even today, several thousand years later. At the same time, tools of the Paleolithic types continued to be made and used, and remember, some tools were also made of bone. Many kinds of earthen pots have also been found. These were sometimes decorated and were used for storing things. People began using pots for cooking food, especially grains like rice, wheat, and lentils that now become an important part of the diet. Besides, they began weaving cloth using different kinds of materials, for example, cotton that could now be grown. They think saints everywhere and all at once. Not quite. In many areas, men and women still continue to hunt and gather food, and elsewhere, people adopted farming and herding slowly over several thousand years. Besides, in some cases, people tried to combine these activities, doing different things during different seasons. A closer look. Living and dying in Merghar. Find Merghar on map 2, page 13. This site is located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass, which is one of the most important routes into Iran. Meherkar was probably one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat and rear sheep and goats for the first time in this area. It is one of the earliest villages that we know about. At this site, many animal bones were found, bones of wild animals such as the deer and pig, and also bones of sheep and goat were found. Other finds at Meherghar include remains of square of rectangular houses. Each house had 4 or more compartments, some of which may have been used for storage. When people die, their relatives and friends generally pay respect to them. People look after them, perhaps in the belief that there is some form of life after death. Burial is one such arrangement. Several burial sites have been found at Meherghar. In one instance, the dead person was buried with goats, which were probably meant to serve as food in the next world. Elsewhere, cave paintings in France. Find France in your atlas. The painting below is from a cave in France. This site was discovered by 4 school children more than 100 years ago. Paintings like this were made between 20,000 and 10,000 years ago. Many of these were of animals such as wild horses, horses, an older wild form of cattle, bison, woolly rhinoceros, reindeer, and bear, painted in bright colors. These colors were made from minerals like ochre or iron ore and charcoal. It is possible that these paintings were done on ceremonial occasions, or perhaps they were made for special rituals performed by hunters before they went in search of prey. Can you think of any other regions? Elsewhere, a Neolithic site. Find Turkey in your atlas. One of the most famous Neolithic sites, Katel Hayuk, was found in Turkey. Several things were brought from great distances: flint from Syria, cowries from the Red Sea, sails from the Mediterranean Sea, and used in the settlement. Remember, there were no crabs. Most things would have been carried on the backs of pack animals such as cattle or by people. What do you think cowries and sails would have been used for? So এইখিনি আছিলে আমাৰ চেপ্টাৰ নম্বৰ 2 হিষ্ট্ৰী. চ' আমি থৰলি চেপ্টাৰটো আমি ৰিড কৰিলোঁ. তো ইয়াৰে মেইন কি পইণ্টছ কিছুমান আছে. চ' আমি নেক্সট ভিডিঅ'ত ইয়াৰে কি পইণ্টছখিনি লৈ আহি মানে এক্সপ্লেইন কৰি দিম মই. চ' তাৰ আগতে তোমালোকে এবাৰ চেপ্টাৰটো থৰলি ঘৰত ৰিড কৰিবা. ভিডিঅ'ত মই যেনেকৈ ৰিডিং কৰিছোঁ, নিউ ৱৰ্ড যোনবিলাক আছে এইবোৰ চাবা, প্ৰনাউন্সিয়েশ্যনবিলাক চাবা, ঠিক আছে, এণ্ড ট্ৰাই কৰিবা ৰিড কৰাৰ কাৰণে. অ'কে, চ' আমি নেক্সট ভিডিঅ'ত আকৌ এইটো এক্সপ্লেনেশ্যন ডিছকাশ্যনটো আমি নেক্সট ক্লাছত কৰিম. অ'কে, চ' থেংক ইউ.